everyone, and welcome to our webinar on membership categories, individuals. My name is Christine Bundy, and I will be your host today. I am the Director of Customer Success, and fun fact is I love questions. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them into the Q&A, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. Today's session is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel for anyone for in the future. If you have, again, questions, put them in the Q&A because everybody's camera is turned off and everyone has been muted. All right, so for today, what are we going to go over? So we're going to go over like the basics of how to create a membership. And then we're going to get into more details of the different types, what's the renewal period, approval processes, membership fees, and all the things that go along with it. Some of the things that we aren't going to cover in today's video is renewals because we have a separate webinar for that. And any of the group membership will be in next week's webinar with Carlos. So those are things that will be coming up. But we will be going through all the emails, figuring them, and then also the membership forms. And badges and add-ons. And then we will go through the best practices at the end. And of course, questions. If you do put the questions in and I see them as I go, I will try to answer them because I do have them on my second screen. But we will dive in now to Member 365. All right. So I logged in to my Member 365 CRM as an administrator. One thing I always like to point out when I am here is if you do not see all the options at the top of the screen, specifically membership, the one we are looking at today, that is because you do not have the permissions to have access to it. So if you need those permissions, please talk to your admin manager to get those. We are going to be going into category setup and going through those. So first, how do I make basic? Just super simple membership. I can go create membership category. I can make one for the staff. I always recommend having a staff membership. And this is so that you can do all the testings that you need to do for your events and for other things. So having a lifetime staff membership or admin staff, or however you want to word that each of your administrators keep. So when they go into the member portal, they see it as a member and not a non-member. So it's super easy to do. Individual. Again, we'll talk about these in next week's webinar. The main difference between these is organization can have multiple people. Family and organization work exactly the same, except for family, you can customize to say chapters or family or whatever language you want to use for that. Then we talk about the different, your renewal periods. So the first one here is anniversary. So anniversary is you join today, and then 1 year from today, you then can renew that membership. Whereas annual is the organization decides what the renewal date is. So it could be, well, most of the time it's either June 30th or December 31st. And then everyone that joins that membership, they all renew at the same time at December 30th or June 30th. Lifetime is there is no renewal. They pay one time and they get access. And then term can either be on a monthly, 2-month, 5-year, whatever cycle that needs to be. For today, or for this membership category, we're simply going to say lifetime because again, we're doing a staff. We will go in and do annual for our other one that I already have set up. You could have a fee or no fee. Again, if we're doing this for your staff, and then done. Very simple, very basic. If you needed to add purchase, because I had it free, there was no option, but I will go over fees on the next one. So I can exit this, and then we're going to go into our individual membership that we've already made. So I have an individual one here, and we'll go through each of these steps. So as we just made the staff membership, it would auto bring us into our advanced settings. So that is just doing the basics of like the renewal process, how much they pay, and what type is it? Is it an individual or a group? And then in here, you would add more details. So if you want adding a description. I always recommend having a description because when they click on the link from your website, it's going to take them to a new page and you want to reinforce that they're in the correct location. Now, this could be the same language that you have on your website as a little brief description. Some associations need to provide documentation, so you can click here and upload files. So you can have like a PDF. You can even have images. You can embed an image if you need to, or chart. I've seen people put charts in here that are needed. Any of those options are available, but I do recommend at least putting a description in here to reinforce that they are in the right place. Then, as we just mentioned, we have our types. So that was in the basic creation, and we have our period. So I'm actually going to focus on annual because it gives us more options to go through, and I'm going to make this for December 31st, which is the 90, I'm going to say 60% of people do it in December, and then the others do it in June, depending on their cycle. I always recommend that if you are starting from scratch or you're thinking of revamping, think about when your fiscal year ends and then put the renewals 2 months before or 2 months after, because that gives you time to get all of your funds collected before you have to do your year end, and then they're not overlapping and causing your accountant to do things that say this goes in this month or this goes in this is for this year versus that year. It can get really confusing for them. So whenever if someone's saying, hey, we're doing it from scratch, what do you suggest? I'm like, either 2 months before or 2 months after that your organization year end date is always best practice. Next, we have the approval process. So you don't have to have an approval process, but you can. And then you can determine when you want to collect payment. So you can do collection when they are going through the application process, or you can wait until they are done, and then once they are approved, they then have to pay. We then have the settings to determine when they get access to the portal. Do they get access when they're approved or when they are approved and paid? Most of the time when we have approval process, when payment is after, it looks like this. When there is approval process during, it looks something like this, so that they still, if you have check options, they still have to make sure that they're paid before they get access. So they don't get any of those benefits without any outstanding balances. Every organization is different. I always recommend doing what's best for your organization. If you need help or advice, please let us know. You can also have renewal approval processes. I'm going to say 90% of people that have renewal processes don't have renewal approval processes because they've already been approved. So the only time you really need the renewal approval processes is if there's something every year the member has to provide to re-authenticate their ability to be a member. So that might be providing new documentation, or do they still have their license for XYZ, anything like along those lines. Finally is adding admin notifications. Now, you can do this for new applicants or renewals. I know that some people find this really messy and they don't want this. You also have two more options when you have group memberships on and when employees or group accounts are added or removed. That is typically when it is used. However, some people like getting that notification in their inbox. It also gets put on the dashboard. So if you have the approval process, it is on your dashboard automatically. If you don't and you just want to know, you can put in an email address. If you want more than one person to get notified, you can just put a comma between the email addresses and they both will be sent that communication. Make sure as you're updating every page, you hit save. Please be aware it does take a little bit of time for it to reload, and it will show up at the top here in just a few seconds in a green bar saying that it was saved. So if you don't see that bar, don't move on until it appears, because then you know it's actually being saved, just like it does right here. Now let's go into fees. Okay, so there are 5 different options for individual memberships. Group memberships doesn't have organization pricing, so that's the difference between the two. So flat fee, very simple. Now, application fee, this is for like their first year's membership fee. And then we have the renewal fee. You can have separate ledgers for each of these. I really like it for accounting purposes because then I have a ledger for each. Some associations like to get even more detailed and actually put a separate renewal ledger. So then they can tell, okay, for annual new members, I got this much money. And for renewal members for the year, I got this much money. So you can easily tally it in the revenue report as a total because it's already in its own column instead of you having to go, okay, this one was a renewal, this one was an application. So it's just already there for you. Again, completely up to you. Just ask your accountant how they would like to manage that. Next option is our category dropdown. Now, this is if you have ranges. So some associations do their memberships based off of, some do it based off of how many employees they have for group members. Some do it based off of revenue, completely depends. So if any of those are type of questions that you want to do, in this option here, you would do the question. So again, it's already in here for me because I use it quite often. How many employees do you have? You can say one and it's $50, or two, it's $100, however you want to do it. In these, you can also do ledgers for each of them. It also could be if you have different options. So some might have different nationalities, or if they have a certification versus non-certification, and those could be different pricings as well. So if it's just a simple question that they need to be either this or this because it determines the pricing, that's when you use the category dropdown. Custom fee is if you have to read all of the questions in the application for approval, and then based off those answers, you have a specific amount that you need to put in manually. That's when you use custom. And that is automatically with a pre-approval process. So that does require the payment after they are approved. Then there is unit fee. So this is if you have, the best example is we do have some associations that have units or franchises. And so it's based off of how many franchises they have. So the question might be, how many stores do you own? And then the price would be per unit. Oh. You could also have it so that it has, you could have its own ledger for the invoice if you want. And unit price. So it could be like $100 per store. You can make the question mandatory. You can have minimum charges, maximum charges, or higher ranges if you want to. Then you can simply add the question and it'll be one of the options that they have to fill out during the application process. These three I typically see for group memberships. However, these two are also for mainly individuals. Completely depends on your setup. If you're wondering which one to use, ask us. I love having calls talking about strategy. More than happy to do. We also have organization price. Now this one is a new one that we actually just brought out last year. And I've actually used this quite a bit in the last few months. And what it does is that if you are wanting to group organization memberships payments with individuals, and they have to have their own individual membership. So for example, say that you're a clinic and you have nurses that are within your clinic that you want to offer a free membership for. So I'm going to pay the organization price, and then all of the nurses associated to my organization get their membership for free. So that's why this is there. So you can have the fee set up so that if the organization has an active membership, we can make this be $0. And then if the organization, and you got to make sure that you add your decimal points. If the organization does not have a membership, it could be the $50. Now, that just needs to be updated. Yeah. So then we have the application fee. So then this would change to the $50. So if only those that don't have a connecting organization record that is an up-to-date active membership, they then have to pay the difference. Now I'm going to, for today's purposes, switch this back to flat fee. These aren't matching, so I'm going to switch them to match. and refresh my page because it's just doing too many things for it. 1 minute. There we go. Okay, so for today, we're doing flat fee, the $50. You can also add a late fee if you want. So if they don't renew by 30 days after their lapse date, you can have an additional charge. You can also have their additional ledger to coincide with that. If you then also want to prorate, because we said we're on annual. So annual is the only type of renewal period you can do proration on. Any other type does not allow it. So it's only on annual. And there are 3 types of proration. There's the calendar where you can manually create each month. There's extension, where is if they do it within the month that you've selected. So if you have December 31st, so if they're within December, they automatically get an extension. This does not work if you put January 1st because there's nothing before the first of a month. So it's only working if you're in the middle or at the end of a month that extension would work. And then you have proration. So you have forward, which is when members pay the remainder fee of the current year as well as the full of the next year. Backwards, members will pay the fee adjusted for the remaining months and no further charges. So they just pay up until the month that they're on and until the end of the year. And then extension is when they pay adjusting remainder and then we'll pay the amount for the next year or years that you indicate. So you can actually indicate how many years they have to pay for. Now, you only want to use one of these types of proration. I see typically people using the calendar. And the reason for that is they like to offer extensions for for November and October. So this is what I typically see for anyone that has an annual membership. They get November and December, they get to pay the full amount and they get an extension. So they kind of get like 2 months of grace period as a bonus for sign up later in the year, which can also coincide with your membership drive to be like, hey, get 2 free months. It's enticing to get them to come on early. And then the rest of the time it's full price. Completely up to you. When you create these, you can do it based off of percentage or a specific amount that it's reduced by. So you can do those calculations if you want. You can always do full. But again, this is what I typically see whenever I do calendars with people that are wanting proration. Next is you're going to select your payment options. If you are only going to accept credit card for testing purposes, have check enabled. Once you're done testing, then go back and remove it. Completely up to you. You also then have your ability to have your credit card. If you're an organization that also has a membership or sponsorship that needs to go into a separate bank account, you need to have a separate gateway. And when you create it, you can switch the gateways. I can't switch this right now because I have ARB enabled. ARB is only available or mostly recommended is if you're doing a flat fee or a drop down category that they won't be switching back and forth from. Because once you enable ARB, that is the amount in which or the category payment fee that they are going to be charged each cycle that they renew automatically. For this, you do want to make sure that you have these in blue to enable them so they have the ability to opt in. You can force it or you can make it optional. The only time I recommend forcing it is if they have a monthly one, because then you know it's going to go on their credit card. You can make it so it forces them to do it, but they have the ability to opt out at any time in the member portal. Then you set your taxes to what you need them to be, and we save. Next, let's go to application form. So again, I'm just waiting for that green bar to appear at the top here to say that I have saved my work before I move on. And yes, it does take a couple minutes, but it does ensure that it saves correctly. Okay, now forms. Default for individual memberships is first name, last name, and primary email address. I always recommend getting the organization name unless you have a specific reason why you should not. And then I always recommend turning on the drop-down option and the ability to add an organization. Why? Because I want to make sure that this is not going to get duplicated. Fun fact, back in the day when we were a much smaller team, I asked all 9 of my colleagues to write out member 365. Guess how many times or different ways they spelt it? 9. Some people put a capital for member 365. Some people put a space. Some people put M365. Anyway, so with the different characters and different variations of it, every variation creates a new organization record, which means no one in the system is related because there are 9 different organization names spelled differently. Therefore, this prevents that. So you have the one organization with all related contacts under one. It makes your cleanup a lot easier. There are cases where one person gets in and adds it without looking, very rare, but this helps reduce that number. So I always like to make it mandatory. It's up to you. You can also do departments. You don't have to have address unless you are charging tax. If you are charging tax, then it is required to have a business or residential. Now, I get asked this a lot. What is a business address? So, for example, our head office is in Canada, but we all work remotely. So, technically, our business address is our residential address because that is where we are conducting our business during the day. So, some people also have different departments. So, their head office might be downtown, whereas they have a separate office on the outskirts of town, and then that would be their business address. So, there's organization and then there's business. You can also ask for other items here. The biography, this is for the workspaces. This will not appear in the directory. If you want a bio for the directory, that's when you would add it to the form questions for directories. Something that I get asked a lot, so just so there's no confusion. So this biography goes into the workspaces, into the workspace directory, not into the like membership directory that you may make. So that's the difference between the two. Secondary contacts. I love this one for those who are not very tech savvy or have assistants or need help or may have a personal assistant that does all the managing for you. You can turn this on. It can be optional. It does not have to be mandatory. It allows the secondary person to act on behalf of the primary, helping them with renewals, logging on their behalf, do all those things. I love this one personally. My partner is not tech savvy. I run all of that stuff for him. So having this capability is really handy. Also for elderly individuals, such as my grandmother, she has no idea how to turn on a computer, let alone use one. This is a great feature so that we can assist her on all the things that she needs. Then you have forms. So we're not going to show you how to create a custom form. We are going to simply show you that you can turn it on and create custom questions above and beyond the ones up here. So these are our standard contact details. If you need further questions on the application for approvable processes, this is when you would add a membership form. If you wanted questions to appear in the directory that you connected to the member application, that's when you would have it in the directory form. And we'll discuss that when we do a directory webinar. You can add disclaimers, and the disclaimers are kind of anything above and beyond asking for email consent. So if you are wanting to write a disclaimer about your directory or anything along those lines, you can do so here. All you have to do is make sure that you put the I agree to, and then this is where you would put the content. And then you can make them mandatory if you want. So that you can have, again, in here, a lot of people are like, hey, can I add a PDF? Yes, you can. We have the same editing capabilities, so you can put in links if you need to, or have it go into a PDF document they read, or just simply put in the text directly in here so they can read it from here. All right, so now we're going to save. And we're going to go to automated email. So I am not going to go over renewals. That is a separate webinar. And so we'll go over that another day. And then also CE, we will not go over today. So those are kind of the items we won't. We're simply going to go over emails. So these are all of our default emails. So you can come in here and you can edit these. The most important thing in these emails is this section right here, because we will automatically give them a temporary password that they can use. Once they use it to log in, then the member can change it. They can go into the member portal and change their password. One is the one thing that you will see the most when you do send out the welcome email is people will not copy this correctly. They'll do something like this where it adds a character, and so they go to paste it in and there's an extra space. If they don't type it in, they try 5 times and it gets locked out, you're gonna have to then reactivate them or re-enable them in their member profile. But you can come in here and you can adjust these. You can change the text if you need to. We have the merge tags already in there. You can send a test to yourself, or more than one. Although I always recommend to really test this is to go through the process itself. And then way you can see it. If you do not see CE continuing education, it is because you do not have it enabled in your system. It is an additional fee. So it is a premium module. So CEU is for continuing education programs. You can also add fundraising. So we will go over this once we do the fundraising module, where you can add it to your application process and renewal process. Since you're asking for money, ask for a little more. And then we have other settings. So this is where we have the membership badge that members can see in the member portal. You can add ons. So if there's different packaging, like insurance or anything along those lines, you can simply select ones that you need to create or have already created. And then you can set the different needs for them. If they're pre-populated, make them mandatory, allow them not to be. If people are wanting to have a processing fee, you could make it mandatory for credit cards and put it on both the renewal and the application process if you want. And then you can also force them to at least pick one. So if they need to pick one of each option, you can force them to do one at least. We also have certificates. So you can add certificates. You can have more than one if you want. Some people like to have a certificate and a membership card. So you can play around with certificates to make cards as well. If you need a few templates or looking for any of those, let me know. I do have a couple. You can also determine if they can post benefits or not. So allowing members to post their own benefits. Customization. This is if you want to customize anything after the thank you message on the confirmation page. And I'll show you where that is in a minute. Then we have training prerequisites. So you have to complete certain training for your LMS. If you don't have LMS, this does not apply. LMS is a premium module, so it is an additional fee. You can archive memberships. So once they become a member in this category, they automatically archive another. So let's say they're in this one, it's going to automatically archive the one before it. So it could be the quick membership sign up, maybe your trial site, any of those. You can hide. This is if you have the feature in the member portal where they can see all the membership types. You can hide certain ones. So if you have an honorary or a lifetime that only the primary or the admin is supposed to put people in, you can hide it so it's not visible. Then we have prerequisites. So if you have someone going from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, they have to have a prerequisite to get into this one. Then you can do that. Admins can always manually add them on the back end if needed. So if someone needs to be in year 3, you can do that. But if you have to do things in a certain process, that's what the prerequisite is for. And again, you would just hit yes and then select the one that they must be in before they can do this one. We do have leave discounts, so you can do it based off of a percentage or a rate that they get a discounted for if someone is on leave. So like mat leave, medical leave, sick leave, all of those fun things. And then finally, badges, status badges. So these are for members to be able to take this badge and embed it onto their website. So this is mainly used for organizations, but I have seen members use it to be like, I'm a certified XYZ. And so they have that badge. For this to work, you need to go all the way up to the top and have a badge here. if you're like, hey, what are the specifications for that? They're right here for you. These specifications are the same ones as down here. So just make sure that you upload those correctly for active and non-active. So if they are an active member or a lapsed, just kind of like this. And then that's how they appear on their website when they put the embed code in there. Okay, so next, let's do a test. Always test. Always test. Always test your processes. Make sure you understand what those flows look like. Now I'm going to go into incognito and I'm going to put the link that I just copied in here. So it thinks that if I had this link on your website and I clicked on it, this is what is going to happen. So the first thing that they do is put in an email address. And so because I've been in here a few times, I'm going to put an outrageous number. So I put plus and then a number because I've already done this and I want it to think that I'm brand new. Then I fill in the information that is required. I don't have to fill that one in. Again, I kept this pretty basic. If you need more details, you can. We also have options for add-ons. These are all optional information because it doesn't have an italics, but you can simply fill it out. Have them upload if they need to. They need specific CSVs. They then have to agree to all of the items here. Once they agree, they then can hit continue. Oh, one of them was mandatory. This one, I need to upload a file, which is okay. We're just going to take an image that I have and hit continue. And then pay. So this is why I also say having check here for testing purposes. Obviously, you don't have to run credit cards. And then this is the thank you message. So if you want something above and beyond this, you can add it in and you can have additional messaging in here. So with that, you can also then go to your statistics page or your dashboard, because it's also on your dashboard, and see any pending. So all of your pendings, if you have approval processes, will be in here as well. And so you will be able to see, so this is the one we just did. I can review it. And then I can approve or mark as paid after I've reviewed everything in the application, and I think it's great. If you need to, you can print out details. So if you have a committee that you need to give this information to for them to review and then approve, and then they just say, yes, these people are approved, you can download these details into a PDF to send to them, and then you can come back and either approve or deny or request more information. Once you marked it as paid, because that was the setting we have, and have it approved, they will automatically be sent the welcome email. Now, if they paid by credit card and you hit approve, some associations will send the approval email and then the welcome email will go out at the same time. Others might skip this email so they don't get this email and the welcome email and just have everything in the welcome email. Again, this is why you want to test this process and get those emails so that you know what's being received. And then if you want to reduce that number, you can by simply skipping this and putting everything in the welcome email. If people are allowed to have more than one membership category, you may not want to skip the approval email because they're not going to get the welcome email twice. You only get it once from the system. All right, so there we go. We've tested it out. Now let's go into best practices. So let's go back. And so based on everything that we had gone over, let's go into our best practices. So first, clear and concise. So clearly describe your membership categories so they know which category they're in. I also recommend doing this for your renewals, which I do mention in the renewal webinar. Test, make sure that you know what the approval process is, what emails the members are getting, so that you're comfortable with it and you know that messaging and all the links work, that if you put links into your welcome messaging. ARB conditions. Again, I only recommend using ARB if you're using flat fee or if you have categories that do not change. So if they are, for example, either one or the other and that's it, you either are one or the other, you might switch in 10 years. You can manually switch them on the back end, but if they have ARB enabled, it's set for that amount that they had originally been set for. So just something to be considered when you're doing it for ARB is just make sure that if you are having them being allowed to switch each year, that you don't want to enable ARB. If they are just staying on the same one, then you're fine. And then finally, expiration options. Make sure that you only select one of the three. So even though you are going to use extension or the categories or the other three options, pick one and only one. Otherwise, if you do select more than one, they are going to cancel each other out. So just something to consider. All right, questions. I do love questions. If you have any, please let me know. Any questions about membership? Even if you have any questions about anything else related, I'm more than happy to answer those. Oh, one person did ask about the CSU line admin and I can't see it. So yeah, any of our premium modules that we mentioned during the webinar, so there are only two. So there is CE, Continuing Education, and LMS. Those options are premium and they are additional fee. So if you are looking or interested in those, we can have a conversation and direct you to your account manager for further discussion. Again, if you are thinking of changing up your memberships or have any questions or want to have a 30-minute session on strategy, please submit a ticket. We're more than happy to have those conversations to make sure the settings are done correctly so that you aren't going to have any issues in the future. All right. Thank you very much for joining me today. It was a pleasure having you, and we will see you next time.